And we're back, Stripe Show podcast on a Tuesday. I'm your host, Travis Fulton. Thank you for making us part of your day. We're back in the saddle post PGA Championship week. If you happened to watch the pod last week, well, you saw a fairly lengthy discussion about your winner, Brooks Koepka, with the guy that joins me as he's back in his house. Because I think I saw him actually playing golf at Oak Hill on Monday, post PGA Championship. He was covering it all week long. Congratulations on another win. Mr. Keith Stewart, thank you for joining us again. How are you?
I am doing well. Recovering from yesterday's Oak Hill experience. Golf is hard, Travis. Golf is hard. I have more respect for Michael Block now than ever.
Right? I mean, I've been telling people that because, and I talked about it yesterday on the podcast. You know, look, he's a teaching professional. That's what I do primarily and have been doing for 22 years. And he made a joke. He said, I only hit one bucket of balls every single week. And I think most people are like, oh, come on, you practice more than that. But I genuinely think he probably only hits one or two buckets of balls, which I can relate to. And then he probably gets a getaway 9 with his son or maybe one of the members. I mean, for him to make money, he's got to teach golf. He's not out there grinding with the same resources as Justin Rose and Rory McIlroy are, the two guys he played with over the weekend. I mean, look, it's been, I don't know, has it been probably overdone and overstated a little bit? Perhaps, but it really is an amazing story just how well he played.
Everyone in the team of 20 is a fabulous player, right? All of those club pros that make it. But I just admire the guy's self-belief. The idea that he just kept it going through the whole – I watched him warm up both Saturday and Sunday on the range, just standing there, and the guy was just striping it, and he was really, really comfortable with himself. And, I mean, kudos to him. Justin Rose on Saturday, Rory McIlroy on Sunday.
Yeah, not bad.
I tell you, it was people asked me to say, how was the championship? And I said, it was a very emotional tournament. Anyone that was there on Sunday really felt the connection to what was going on. And I go to a lot of tournaments, so I can't say that all the time. But I was fortunate enough. I was next to the 15th green when he dunked it. And I tell you, everybody that was there shared a moment, and we were all like, I mean, there was just a lot of emotion surrounding all of that. And kudos to him to hold it all together through all those interviews and, just be a great representative for the PGA of America. Good job.
Look, yeah, no, I mean, what a stance, what a representative for the PGA of America. And yeah, job well done. He's in the field this week at the Charles Schwab Challenge, which we'll get to here momentarily. We've got a lot of info to share you when it comes to the Colonial Country Club. I've actually played that course a few times, but I want to go back to Brooks Koepka. Yesterday, I talked about, look, when Brooks was on the PGA Tour and he won 4 major championships while he was on the PGA Tour, and then he leaves, now he's on LIV, now he gets his 5th major. When he was on the PGA Tour, a younger Brooks, look, for people who follow the podcast, they know he was kind of insufferable in some ways to me. He was arrogant. I think he was a little condescending. Yeah. I look at Brooks now. I feel like he's been a little humbled through some of his injuries. I mean, he's still going to be the confident Brooks, don't get me wrong. But I do think he's been humbled to some degree. We saw him on Netflix series Full Swing, where he certainly was at the bottom, lost his confidence. He's been married for a while. He's going to be a father. I see some maturity with Brooks. I found myself down the stretch cheering a little bit more for Brooks than I have in the past. But make no mistake, you talked about it last week on Tuesday. Beautifully said. No one's played better in major championships, lowest scoring average. The guy is healthy, second at the Masters. Look no further. And sure enough, Brooks Koepka was the best player that week.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was fantastic. But, I think we're all better people after we bottom out, Travis. And I think that you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. And, there's a million great things you could say about what Brooks did, and whether you like him or not, maybe we'll just never understand the healing powers of Jenna Sims's swing in her closet. I don't know. But, since then, the guys, the Masters, the PGA, I mean, he's back to being Brooks, Guess who's back again. So, and LACC, I don't see that as being a great fit golf course for him, but the guy won at Shinnecock, and that place is going to play hard and fast. So, I mean, it's pretty unbelievable because the injuries, from what we understand, were pretty bad. And just like I mentioned with Block, how self-confident he was, and he kept it all together. Obviously, we saw all the things that you just mentioned about Brooks and his confidence. Got to give the guy all the credit in the world. I played that golf course yesterday, and for him to shoot 9 under par for 4 days over 72 holes, man, I'd just shake his hand, give him a nod, and I'd walk on by. I'd say, man, you're a better man than me. It's unbelievable.
All right, well, let's turn the page. Charles Schwab Challenge, Colonial Country Club, a staple on the PGA Tour. Of course, it's tied closely to Ben Hogan, who has won this tournament 5 times. We talked about Brooks's 5 majors. Mr. Hogan has 9. Fort Worth, Texas, I think just a great spot down in there. I've been to Fort Worth many times. I've played Colonial a few times. They play it as a par 70. It's kind of unique in that the first 2 holes are the easiest 2 holes on the course, a par 5 that you can kind of cut the dog leg, get there easy into 17. You can cut the dog leg a little bit, little flip wedge into it. And then it gets a little more difficult in Hogan's Alley, 3, 4, and 5. Just a good golf course. Like, you're not going to overpower this course. Some of the longer hitters, can bite off some of the dog legs. Obviously, once again, the approach is going to be huge here. You're going to have a lot of shots from 140 to 175, call it. So approach is big. Putting weighs out big here historically. It's right up there with the approach game. And look, these are small greens, but I kind of came away playing Colonial. I didn't find it to be the most difficult short game shots. I think it's pretty straightforward when it comes to short game. So, those are my thoughts when it comes to Colonial. You look at the previous winners. I hit this last year with Sam Burns. If you see Sam Burns win, I was on it. He won it back in 2022. Jason Kokrak in 21. Daniel Berger in 2020. Kevin Na. I mean, are any of these previous winners playing? I mean, like, Burns is it. Oh, there's Justin Rose back in 2018. He's playing in it this week and coming off a nice tournament at the PGA. You think of Colonial, you think of Ben Hogan. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, I'd love to ask you more questions about playing the golf course because I love to dig in there, right?
Yep.
Is it the type of place that is like the Heritage where, you get a little off the fairway and trees will start blocking you out? Or because everyone seems to be putting a lot of emphasis on driving the golf ball in play and getting yourself these proper angles on approach. Now, it's a lot of mid-iron play. We can see that on paper. Mm-hmm. But when you played it, maybe outside of the horrible horseshoe that you mentioned, right? Did you feel that it was that tight off the tee? Because
no, I didn't feel like it's that tight. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't go quite that tight where now obviously there's some situations where you could probably sense that, but I would not put it at the Heritage. I'm in the fairway and I'm still kind of like, I got to shape a shot, not that kind of thing.
So more like Wailea then.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I think obviously you're going to have to play it from the fairway. I think the main defense really of this golf course is going to be the wind. You can get the warm wind, of course, down there in Texas. And as I look at the forecast ahead, I don't see much wind. You got the basic 5 to 10, maybe a slight gust, a little chance of rain on Thursdays, but it looks like mid 80s to me. And very scoreable conditions and not a ton of wind that can cause havoc on a shorter golf course like that.
Yeah, I got to laugh because 2 weeks ago they're at the Nelson, it's 85. Last week there's a frost delay and now they're back to 85 again. It's like, it's kind of funny. So I guess it's down to approach play then.
It is. I think so.
Who's the best with a 9-iron, right?
Yeah, because because some of these some of these holes, like number 3, I mean, you gotta fit it in there. Dog legs left. You gotta fit it in between the bunkers. Some of these dog legs are going to kind of force your hand into certain situations. This is not going to be a course where you look at it statistically, and the distance off of the tee is going to be exceptionally higher than tour average, right? It's going to be the other way around. Guys are going to hit it to some of these dog legs. There are a few that you can cut, like number 1, maybe number 2 a little bit. But it's going to force your hand to some degree. Only 2 par 5s, so you're not going to overpower it. Got to have the approach game. I'll go ahead and bump down around the greens a little bit, and then who's gonna make some putts? Because you're going to have you're going to have to be able. I think what's interesting here also is you look at it statistically, you have a lot of 10 to 15 foot putts here. It's not a course where the proximity over the years is one where it's really tight. The proximity is actually pushed out just a little bit. You're going to have a lot of those, call it 8 to 15 footers. And so I think we're looking for someone who can start to fill it up in that range, which tends to maybe kind of free a few people up, like a Scotty Scheffler, where when you start getting in closer 5 to 10, they start to seem to be a little bit worse. So I think that's kind of an interesting tidbit when I was doing some of my research.
I like that a lot. Over the last 10 years, strokes gained putting is, on average by the champions is, over 5. And that's second only to approach. And, 2 strokes more than off the tee. So all your points there got me kind of locked into where I think I want to go with this. I've got some early leans, but I think between you and me there, we've got it doctored up pretty good. One other thing, agronomy wise, right? It's kind of a neat, you don't see this combination a lot, but you've got Bermuda grass everywhere, but you've got bent grass greens. And for the third week in a row, we've got bent grass greens. And we've only seen bent grass. This will be now the 4th time on tour. So I'm going to pay attention to that too, because I think you're right. I think the guys that are filling up between 10 to 15 feet and can putt on bent are the guys we're going to talk about.
That's certainly an area that I've done some research on and going to continue to take a little deeper dive on. All right, who can fill it up from that range? Who's good on bent grass surfaces? I doubt these greens are going to be quite as good as what we saw last week. I mean, my goodness, those greens last week.
They were good. They rolled pure for sure. I wish I'd gotten to them sooner, but the rough was unbelievable. I've never played a golf course with rough like that before. I mean, it's a grown man's game. I mean, it's no surprise to me that Brooks and the guys that were at the top were powerful. It looks to be like that's what major championships are going to be for a while, because man, oh man, it's a power game. There's no question about it when it comes to the big tournaments. So we can go ahead and take a little bit of the emphasis of power down this week, but it certainly always has its advantages. There's Scheffler kicking things off. The 2 Texas guys, Scheffler and Spieth, kicking it off there at 4-1 for Scotty, and then Jordan at 14. We'll just start there with the 2 Texas guys. I think, look, Scheffler over the last 2 or 3 weeks, if he just makes more putts, he wins more tournaments. We know that is the club that tends to hold him back a little bit, in particularly from the closer range. Everything else is just elite. It was good to see Jordan get through all 4 rounds. The wrist seems to be okay, and now he comes back to a spot. When you look at historically who has played Colonial the best, it would be hard pressed to find someone who plays it better than Jordan Spieth. Are you okay with Spieth? 14-1, not bad, really, considering how well he's played here with Scheffler as the favorite. Are you comfortable what you saw last week to maybe sprint to go ahead and put a little there at 14 and give up some? Those 2 guys, when you start talking about having question marks, Scotty didn't prove it to me with the putter. And Jordan, although I do think he's healthy, I don't think he, maybe an extra week of preparation since the Byron. Jordan just, he led social media and hot mics, and he looked really frustrated to me. He was definitely, of the top 5 guys, I felt like were kind of, Rahm being number 1, but Jordan was probably number 2 of guys that really, when I watched them during the week, they just didn't seem like they were clicking, Travis. And I know he's going back to a place where he's comfortable. His in 10 times there, his stroke average is 67.75. I mean, come on. And he leads the scoring average, and he leads every strokes game. I mean, the guy is a stud there, but top 5, top 10, I'm all in, but we're splitting hairs and we're picking winners. And at 14, I think we can get better value down the board. That's the way I feel.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I went ahead and passed on both of them. No one's surprised if they win, but Spieth, 4 top 10s in the last 4 years. We get to Finau. He's got a couple top 5s. in the last 4 years. Finau coming in at 14-1. Finau, major disappointment for me last week. I was on him. He made the cut, but he didn't hit it great. Lost 4.5 putting. I don't know. It just when you want to kind of push Finau across the finish line, maybe for a big event and win one. He kind of seems to take a couple steps back. Colin Morikawa, a little bit of a disappointment perhaps last week as well, 16-1. And then I'll stop at Victor, 16-1. Look, I'm ready to, I'm ready to admit that the short game is no longer a major issue for Victor Hovland. I do think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but last week around the greens, a little more cush. It was not exactly tight, right around there. It looked like even the fringe was cut just a fraction higher. I think Brad Faxon was talking about that. So a little more room to play, maybe some of those shots. I do trust Hovland more out of the thicker rough than I do some of the tighter lies, around the green. But I do think Hovland, I'm ready to say it's not a major weakness anymore. I've been touting it here on the podcast, and that it looks better. It looks better.
Oh yeah.
But statistically, it just hasn't been. And then I think over the last couple weeks now, he's starting to show the stats as well. You can just tell, like in his mannerisms, in the way that he gets up to the shot and hits it, he's just way more confident. He's not overthinking it, and he knows what's going to happen. So I'm ready to put that to rest. Positive 10.6 strokes gain approach last week for Victor Hovland.
I saw it, man. It was impressive,
God.
Yeah.
I mean, that is insane. That is insane. Victor Hovland's going to win this event, and he's going to win this tournament.
Well, I'll tell you what, you bring up a couple really good points there. Number one, Faxon's right. Everyone's right. You're not going to get that bent grass to be that tight. Not up in Rochester in May, maybe in July, like with some drought conditions, but it's not going to get tight. So that gave you a little bit of comfort, but those types of majors that don't have all the runoffs, like last year at Southern Hills, where everything was kind of, chipping swales and very, very tight grass. Anytime a very difficult golf course like that is surrounded by a lot of thick, rough grass, I definitely feel like you can, if you're a Morikawa or a Hovland guy, you can go with them much more in the thicker grass than you can off the tight, right? So that was more set up for Victor's benefit, for Colin's benefit. We've already touched upon it. This is not a huge around the green week, but it's a huge ball striking week. So if these two guys, for me, the top of the board starts with these two guys.
I agree.
And I'll figure out on Read the Line. It won't be a coin flip, but I'll figure out one of these two will definitely lead my card. And I just need to do a deeper dive over the next 24 hours to figure it out. But either one, I would feel very comfortable with starting my card with. And
yeah, I did. I started with Hovland. He's my first.
Yeah, you definitely have to think about Victor being the guy. I watched a lot of Colin warming up, and I did walk with him a little bit. The ball striking's there. It's definitely there. And certainly Victor seems a little more tested with the putter these days, having just been under the gun for the last 4 days, and where Colin was kind of mired in the middle, right? So he didn't have nearly the pressure to get through it, but the ball striking is definitely there. If we're talking about, Victor's got to be the best long iron player in the world right now. The guy, strokes gained 100. Whatever it is,
it's amazing watching him. One of the things that he likes to feel is he likes to feel like he's hitting a big high cut. Like that gets him the feeling like he's getting more on. He's kind of getting out in front of him, and then the high cut, you can see him almost kind of extend and let the club head out a little bit. He's a player that he's got a lot of lag. He's got that flexion in that wrist, and he can. Oh yeah. If he really stays down, he can peel a divot and it can get steep. So I think for him, he tries to almost really extend the spine and kind of throw it out, let the club head pass a little bit, and it just works. This high cut feel, boy, he can just hit some beautiful high shots that just die to the right, and even the driver, it's like almost like he's hitting like a pull cut. Like he's kind of, really the path is hard left and then he's just bleeding it back to the right. But it just doesn't look like he can ever really get, it just doesn't look like it could ever really get out of hand with him. Okay, he kind of sprayed one off to the right. But okay, whatever. It's right there in the first cut. It's just never that far off. So man, he is on a heater right now. I'm ready to go there. Short games pushed down this week. Let's bet Hovland right now, currently at 16-1. I see it in a couple of books. All right, Sung Jae, he's at 20. Max Homa at 22. Burns 30. I'm usually, ready to bet Burns every single week. I don't like what I'm seeing this year. It's been a tough year for Burns. I'm gonna look past that. And Homa coming in. Look, another disappointing performance at a major. T55. This is a guy that obviously 5-time winner on the PGA Tour, has won at some big venues, but the one thing he has not done is contend at all at a major championship. And he's got to feel like, man, what's up? Like, why can't I put this thing together in a major championship? Got LA Country Club right down the road here coming up in a few weeks. He's thinking about that. I don't know. I think these three, Homa, and Burns, I'm going to pass. I'm
with you there. I'm sliding past that. There's a guy we're going to get to in a second, that is definitely as smooth as they come. And I watched a lot of him this past week. Of course, he was kind of near the top, top third of the he was in the top third.
Who is it? Take us there.
Oh, Fleetwood. Come on.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to have dreams. If you want to go with Fleetwood the Mac, man, you definitely, you want to talk about ball striking. He's probably one of the few right now that could keep up with Victor. Mm-hmm. He's strokes gained total. I think he's way over 7 in his last 5 starts. Very impressive. And I was talking about him last week. I said, get Fleetwood now for the LACC for the US Open, because he was like 80-90-1 last week, and he's going to play good at Oak Hill because it's a ball striker's paradise. And then LACC, they're like, oh, it's inland or whatever. It's going to play a lot like Shinnecock did.
Yeah,
where Fleetwood came in second. It's going to be so firm and fast. Everyone talks about the 20 inches of rain they had in January. Well, they haven't had any rain since then, and they'll be able to do whatever they want with that golf course. Fleetwood is just, I think, in a really, really good ball striking frame of mind. I watched him warm up. I watched him probably anywhere from 5 to 9 holes out there on the golf course. So I didn't really see a lot of that, but I saw a lot of him warming up. And I'm always he's a flusher. Man,
yep.
And this is a flusher's golf course. It's the type of guy, he gets a little warm he doesn't have to get super warm, but he gets warm with the putter. And just like Victor, those guys could boat race this field because they're striking it that good with their irons. I
agree. I sprinkled a little on Fleetwood, got him a little better odds than 33-1. Bent's not his best surface, but I feel like, look, Fleetwood's got to get a win on the PGA Tour, doesn't he? He's got to get a win at some point. He's been knocking on the door. 3rd at Valspar, 15 at RBC, 5th at Wells. He was 18th at the PGA last week. You look at him, and he really doesn't have any weaknesses right now. I feel like his short game has improved over the last few years. He's always been a flusher. Like you said, his iron game's good. I think he's really on a heater right now with a driver as well. I'm with you. I'm gonna go ahead and put Fleetwood as my second. This is an interesting range in here because you've got my boy Cam Davis, who was right there again last week. You saw, what did Cam finish? He was 4th last week at the PGA, and he lost one stroke putting.
Yeah, he had a great Sunday, and he's obviously no longer injured like the way he started the year. So
that's right.
That's a good thing.
I'm not going to bet him this week, but right in this range, you got Fowler at 33, which will get some play. And look, I think you've got to sprinkle a little bit on Rose too, don't you? Former champ, playing some great golf right now, kind of checks the boxes on everything that you want here at Colonial. Could Rose be a 2-time winner on the PGA Tour this year? 33, you going to take me there, or no? Or is that that's not enough?
All fall, I kept picking Rose to win outrights, and we got into the start of January, and he's playing great, still playing great. And I didn't have him Pebble Week, and I was kind of kicking myself, but we had him at the Masters. I thought he could win again there. So I definitely think Justin Rose could win again. And I think he can win on a big stage. And I think the Colonial is a pretty big stage, 120 players. This is an invitational. You've got 24 of the top 50 the week after a major, a lot of attention on golf. And I think that Justin Rose can handle that heat for sure. Pretty impressive. His last 4 PGAs, he's finished in the top 13. on some difficult golf courses. So in that range, well, okay, who's more likely to win two because they both play well here? Chris Kirk or Justin Rose?
That's a very good question. I think I would go with Rose.
Yeah, of course.
I think I would go with Rose. Yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean, and they both have great history there, but Rose is, if we're having let's have a golf conversation here, right? If you're picking a team, you're going with Rose because they're both in good form. So at some point, you and I always joke about this off air, but picking outrights is like splitting hairs, man. You got to come up with a reason how that guy is going to have a perfect week. And, not all of us can be a club pro that makes a hole in one and never touch anything, just hoop it. I mean, you've got to figure these things out. And Cam Davis definitely trending. But, when it comes in this range, I'm with you. Rose, Fleetwood is kind of where I'm leaning more.
I think so too. Whatever Justin Rose, look, he left his longtime coach, Sean Foley, who they had a lot of success together. I was surprised when I saw him working with Mark Blackburn on the range. I think it was when I was out there at the American Express earlier this year. But it has worked. I mean, he has not lost strokes with his irons pretty much all year, the all calendar year. His driver has been okay. I think he'd probably like to see it a little bit better, but I think his short game and putting has been fine. So I think I'll sign up for the J Rose. We talked about him last week too. We liked him last week, so I'm comfortable with him again here at Colonial.
I don't care what any chart says. If you drove it well at Oak Hill, you're good with the driver right now, right? There was nobody that went through 72 holes at Oak Hill and had luck with the driver or just popped with it, okay? They knew what they were doing. Those fairways were so tight, and it was at least a half a stroke penalty if you hit it in the rough, even if you were Brooks strong, all right? So it certainly – we're talking now about a positional golf course. He's already won on a positional golf courses up there at Pebble and the Monterey Peninsula. So people's attention have to be on Justin Rose, 100%.
Yep. All right, let's move it down the board here and stop me at a name here. I'll give you a name first, and then you can give me what you're thinking through this range as well. I mean, you got Kirk, who you mentioned at 60, Henley, Siwoo. I'm sorry, no, Kirk's at 40. My bad. Kirk's at 40. Henley's at 40. Siwoo 45. McCarthy, Jaeger, Harmon, Kitayama played well last week. Taylor Moore, Seabez is getting some respect at 80. But I'll take you to McCarthy.
I'm there too.
I like Denny McCarthy a lot this week, and he's someone that I've been following. Had him on the podcast a few weeks ago. I like what I see in his game. I put these key statistics in, a lot that we're talking about, weigh him out, the approach game, some of these key proximity numbers, 125 to 150, 150 to 175, that short to mid iron game that we're going to see. Talked about that 5 to 10 foot range. You look at McCarthy, last 24 rounds coming in, you're getting it with the putter with McCarthy first and foremost. I mean, you could putt on gravel and the guy's gonna, the guy's gonna make putts. And so he's one of the best putters in the world. He checks out all there. I think he's becoming better off the tee. I like what I see from 125 to 175. His strokes gained par 4, which there's plenty of them here. He's third. I mean, he kind of checks a lot of boxes. I get the sense that he's also kind of riding the wave here, like the momentum's building. And so in a place like this, where I've got to make a lot of putts in that 10 to 15 foot range and maybe, and knock down some 12, 15 footers and get on a heater, and my iron game's getting better, I like Denny McCarthy. So I've went ahead and added him as my fourth to my card.
Yeah. For all the reasons listed above and more, you look at the places that he's playing well this past spring, and now as we're heading into the warmer months, the Players, Valspar, Wells Fargo, right? PGA this past weekend. He's got great approach numbers. And last summer, when everyone was riding him coming into the Memorial, and they're like, well, the putter and this, that, the approach play was always kind of the issue. And he seems to have it figured out. I mean, he's gaining strokes positively over the last 10 starts with his iron game. And he's good enough off the tee to put it in play on a positional golf course. And, I think he's averaging like 6 strokes gained with the putter over his last 2 starts. So that to me is a recipe for where you see those guys trending. I always want to see guys doing the things that they always do well, and then trending in the areas that their weaknesses are. And then that's when they win. And I love D-Mac this week. I really do.
Yeah. He works with a guy by the name of Brian Craighan, young teacher, up and comer. And I had Brian on as well. And we talked about some of the significant changes, like some really interesting changes in the way McCarthy kind of uses his body in the ground. And it's made a nice difference. And after I talked to Brian, Danny came on, and it was just a good dialogue on attacking a certain part of his game and how they were going to do it technically. And then how that has then yielded much better iron game. And so that doesn't always work that way, when you start making changes like that. But in this particular case, it has. So I get the feeling that Denny is focused. I get the feeling that where these elevated events are going next year, he's a guy that sees himself in that class. And so I feel like a win for Denny McCarthy is coming. I predicted at the beginning of the year, I'm going to stay on it. Nothing would make me happier if it happened this week. Now, KH Lee, 80. KH Lee is interesting to me.
All right.
I haven't bet it, but I need to look closer. Minwoo Lee. Brendan Todd's got to like this place, doesn't he? I mean, this is like code Brendan Todd, isn't it? Colonial. I mean,
yeah. You're gonna hear a lot of Todd Father talk in the betting circles for sure. And he's been hitting the ball good. I don't know. KH Lee obviously is a good Texas player. I mean, you got to think about that. We're not far from Dallas.
I know.
Yeah.
KH Lee is very interesting to me. And I feel like he's on the come up. 29th at the PGA last week, 50th at AT&T, was 8th at Wells Fargo, which was a elevated event. He's 23rd at the Masters, 19th at Valspar. I mean, he's had, I look at him, the driver, fine. He's had some really good iron weeks. I think I'm talking myself into KH Lee. I really do. And I think that's probably where I'm going to stop. Like, I've looked at the bottom of the board, and I might, always end up sprinkling a little something down in there, but KH Lee is getting a pretty heavy lean for me. And I'm sure I'll look a little bit closer, but in Texas, feels like he's playing some really nice golf as well. And of course, his win back at AT&T was May, back in May, right, of 2022 last year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it was in Texas, right in the same area,
Right
same,
there.
very similar sort of grass setup, all the sorts of things that would make him comfortable. Of the two Lees you mentioned, certainly Minwoo with the power off the tee. Colonial's not as good a match, and KH Lee with the agronomy match and kind of the regional match of the two. I'm not quite there on KH Lee, but you're closer to talking me into it. At least here's the thing, after we have this discussion, I always look, because you bring up some great points on KH Lee there. There's no doubt about it. I have one other guy that's way further down the board, but
Take us.
I was really impressed with Chez Reavie.
Yeah.
Okay. And, I know he finished T40th or whatever, but this is a really hard golf course. It was completely the opposite of the type of golf course you'd think Chez Reavie would play well on. Mm-hmm. All right. His approach game is always been kind of like, whereas he's a straight hitter, and, when he gets the putter going, which is pretty often, the guy he contends, but it's always on what seems to be like a Travelers or a Wailea or something like that. The guy puts it in play. And lately, his iron game has been really, really strong. His last 5 starts, he's gained over 3 strokes on approach, and he gained almost 4 this weekend at the PGA Championship. And I can guarantee you, Chez Reavie was hitting long irons and hybrids into those greens. Okay. And, his last 5 starts are pretty good. And he plays tough golf courses very well. So he's not the best around the green player. So this week, similar to how we're talking about Victor and Colin, if you want to go further down the board, that's a place where I'm going to throw a little love further down the board. That's going to be my bomb of the week right there.
All right, I like it. No, I mean, Chez, and he's on a bit of a heater with his putter too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good find on a venue like this. I think like a Brendan Todd, Chez Reavie's got to be coming in here thinking, like I feel like I've got a chance. Some other names, Seabez, I'll probably take a little closer. I probably won't go there, but I do think this is an interesting spot to him. I think Buckley, when you look at the profile of a player, I think you should look at him. I could be talked into probably Hayden Buckley into a top 20. Carson Young, money qualified in. And I think his type of game would fit pretty well here as well. If you want to keep the, the Texas roots going, I mean, Austin Eckroat, that's another Texas player, finished second at AT&T. He's going to be very comfortable here as well. He ran up the leaderboard just a couple weeks ago and could be full of confidence right now. So I think Young, Eckroat, couple of young players, I look to make the cut. And if you're looking for some, a bit of a bomber to maybe sprinkle a little on, I would definitely recommend a top 20 and maybe just a little lighter on a subtle win ticket.
Keep one thing in mind. I've had this thing with, back in the fall, Matthew Neesmith was making people a lot to
Yeah.
Right. Because he was
until I interviewed him.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
So he was a borderline.
After I interviewed him, he went to hell.
Oh, well, so you're the one.
True story.
And I tell you what, if you look at his results from the last, month or so, the last 5 starts, he's flushing the ball. And here's the thing. The Wyndham Clark story, right? He played with Wyndham Clark the first 2 rounds at Quail. And I was walking with Wyndham probably of those 36 holes. I was with them for 30 holes over those first 2 days. And I watched Neesmith. And I mean, that's the point of being out there, Travis, right? Yep. Is that I'm like, this guy's a flusher, man. This guy, I mean, this guy with his iron game. And, Quail Hollow is, long irons galore, right? And I was just really impressed with the way he composed himself. He was playing with a guy that was playing really well. He played well. Further down the board at a place where you're going to tell me that iron game is that important, like Colonial, right? Which we know it is. I'm playing coy, right? But that's a guy right there that some boards are going to have him around, 110 to 1, where, I mean, he's definitely a great placement play. But, DraftKings galore, anything you want to do with him outright could be trending towards 1. This place tends to reward better players for winning, but we make money in other ways. And I would keep an eye on Matthew Neesmith.
Yeah, he made the cut here. So he's made the cut 2 of the last 3 years. Neesmith is a flusher. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's one of those guys that when you're walking the range, you stop and watch him hit some irons. He played very well at the end of last year in the calendar year. I think he had a run of 3 straight top 10s. He could have won. Tom Kim made those couple bombs coming in and nipped him. I'm drawing a blank there at the end of last year. But anyway, I spent some time with him at American Express, and we're in the back of the range, and we have some mutual friends, and it's the first time I actually got to talk to him. And I did a piece for a show called The Cut on Golf Channel, and I told him off air. I said, Matthew, I feel like you're going to win. Like I feel like you've always been a flusher. Your putting's getting better. You've been in the heat now, and I said, do you feel like you're going to win? And he's just kind of like, well, it's whatever happens. Like you can just tell, like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, since that moment, I mean, he just lost it. His putting went to hell, and then it got back into his ball striking went to hell the first part of this year. But now, to your point, over the last 2 or 3 months, his ball striking's come back. He just went through a little bit of a slump. His iron game's back. He's driving it well, and he's starting to putt, I think, above average for Matthew Neesmith. So I think that's a good find there as well, and in someone to look at that could just absolutely wear you out with your ball striking, with your iron game here. So I feel good about this. I got to tell you, I always feel good, but I really feel good about the way we've kind of ham and egg this show here. in some of these names here. Anybody else down there? Where does Michael Block finish? I mean, the Michael Block show, he went to Disneyland, I'm sure, before, did a commercial, headed over to Fort Worth. Now he's there. He's going to be in RBC in a couple weeks. I saw that he committed there. I mean, the guy's got a new job. He's got a little runway here to make things work. And I'm kidding. He deserves every bit of it.
You got to love recency bias. I tell you,
Michael Block makes the cut. Yes or no?
No.
Yeah.
No. Better than anybody, Travis. These guys are really, really good.
Yeah.
And Michael Block is a very, very accomplished player. Better than I ever was or probably ever will be. Right. But with all due respect to him in the moment and everything, the full-time job people that are out there, top 65 in ties, 2 weeks in a row, it's be tough.
Yep, it is going to be tough. And he's got to emotionally be a little bit drained, I would think. I mean, my goodness. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. No, I know I've never seen anything like that. And just how it just kept building. Then this happened, and then this happened, and then it's like the hole in one. And then that up and down on the 72nd hole was insane. And you could see Rory's caddy shaking his head like, wow, that was a great shot. And Rory smiling, and they were taking it in, but they were also complimenting the play. Like, that was an excellent golf shot from over there to get it up and down and get into the top 15 to come back next year.
I mean, a big part of the experience I went through yesterday was going to the places where we saw activity on Sunday, and blocks up and down on 18 was something we all tried. We all went to where Brooks was on the bunker on 11 because the explosion from the sand was still there. He was in the last group, right? And you could still see the kind of divot there up against the face. And I'm standing there, and I didn't try to hit the shot because I didn't want to break my left wrist. But I'm like, how did this guy hit this shot? And I mean, that's part of the fun of doing it. And blocks up and down was the best up and down on 18 all week.
It was. Yeah, it was. It was an unbelievable shot. There's a picture of him hitting that shot from kind of up in front, and how low that handle was on that downhill. I mean, it looked so unorthodox. Out of the rough, buried, face open, lands it perfect in there, 8 feet, makes the putt. Last thing on the show today, going back to PGA, the one thing that major championships always do for me, Keith, is it always shows me the difference of situational golf. Like, we know all these guys are great players. And sometimes people critique, like they'll send to me and like, man, you talked about that guy like he has no game at all. It's like, whoa. We're talking about him relatively speaking to the rest of the field, strokes gain approach, driving, whatever. We all know they're great players. Nobody out there is not a great player to be on the PGA. Yeah, we know that. So, but what always becomes apparent to me is the gap and who's comfortable being uncomfortable and handling the heat, how big of a gap that is. You look at a Corey Connors versus a Brooks Koepka, that gap is monumental. Skill set wise, maybe not so much. You could sit there, they can all hit the shot. I mean, Corey Connors will drive it straight all day. Iron shot straight all day. His short game's gotten better. His putting's getting a little better. Is Brooks a little more of a complete player skill set wise? Yeah, but I think the margins are tighter with no pressure. Under the gun, major championship down the stretch, that gap is so large of Brooks Koepka being comfortable when he's in the uncomfortable moments versus a Corey Connors who has all the skill set in the world. On a final day on Sunday, you can just see he's just not even close to being the same guy. It's interesting to watch that in major championships and the difference in situational golf when the heat is on.
Well, I look at the second green yesterday, and I was walking with the final group. I started with them on one, and I followed them all the way around. And hey, when Victor misses that putt, I turned to the guy next to me and I said, do not show a guy like Brooks a wound. Right?
Yeah.
Don't get in the ring with that guy and do not show him blood. Right? And then what did he do? Second and third hole, he had maybe 6 feet total in birdie putts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And next thing you know, he's off and rolling, and then he puts himself in a position. Yeah, he had the hiccup on 6 and 7, but those were the two toughest holes on the golf course. Right?
6 is brutal. Yeah.
Yeah. Trust me.
6 is brutal. Brutal.
Maybe the only hole that didn't get enough respect was 9. And then where the pin position on 9 was the most difficult pin position on Sunday.
Yeah.
Hands down. And, Brooks handled all of that. And even though, Victor got within 1, you never felt like Brooks was faltering.
Yeah.
You just felt like the golf course was hard. So to your point, if these guys are all world-class players, get between the ears figured out, get confident, and if you're a young player and you're watching this and you love to bet like Travis and I do, but you're also working on your game, man, there's always going to come a time where you're going to have to succeed in a playoff or do it down the stretch. So test yourself now.
Yeah, you got to test yourself. You got to put yourself in that situation. And to Brooks' credit, look, before Brooks Koepka became a star, he was traveling the world over there on the Challenge Tour and the European Tour. Like he has seen the world. He has taken he's been by himself and independent and taken his hits. Whether you love or hate Brooks, the guy has been through the fire and has learned to come out on the other end better for it and mentally tough and really handling those difficult situations and being comfortable in the most uncomfortable of situations of major championship golf. It's just plain as day, and it played out again last week. All right. At Read the Line, at Keith Stewart, you're the man. Let's keep this streak going and let's keep making and make some money. I need it. I got a couple trips coming up, so I need to get a little extra cash. So I'm gonna take a little deeper look at this Naismith. I like what you were saying there.
Sounds good to me, man. All right, I'll be in next week. I'll see you from Muirfield Village on the road again.
Dog, you gotta ship me one of those milkshakes. All right, deal. See you there.
I'll bring you one back. See you in a week.
All right.